Hello there, and welcome back to Let's Talk About Conflict. My name is Lynn Nash, and I am mediator and teacher and attorney in Dallas, Texas. And today on Let's Talk About Conflict, we are in part 3 of a 5-part series examining the brilliant book by William Ury called Getting Past No. So if you haven't heard the first 2, you can still listen to this one, but I'd encourage you to go back and listen to the first 2. This is a 5-part series. This is a brilliant, brilliant book. It is William Ury is one of the first people who got into getting away from positional bargaining into interest-based bargaining. And so these are tips and tools to help you in a difficult conversation or negotiation or just when you're hearing the word no. These are things to put in your brain and your toolkit to pull back out to see if you can use some of this to help maneuver around no. No is always the easy answer. You hear this and hear this and hear this, but no is easy. So in episode 1 of this series, we talked about going to the balcony. Don't react, go to the balcony. The last episode and the second episode in this series is called Step to Their Side, or Don't Argue, which is really hard. I hear you. Today, in the third part of the series, we're going to talk about Don't Reject, Reframe, which is kind of that, hey, you don't need to be the no giver either. Some tips to find a way through the process rather than feeling like you got to know and you want to tell no the first thing they ask you, you want to tell no. And so, an eye for an eye and everybody's blind, that sort of thing. The next 2 to finish our series will be Don't Push and Don't Escalate, but we'll talk about those on the next 2 podcasts. That's all 5 episodes. But today, let's really focus on Don't Reject, Reframe. Again, this is from the book Getting Past No, written by William Ury. This is the third of 5 strategies. Don't reject, reframe. So Ury writes in his book, to change the game, change the frame. I'll say that again. To change the game, change the frame. All right, what does that mean? Okay. When somebody is being really difficult, you can always say, why do you want that? Or, that's actually interesting. Can you tell me more? Or, hey, help me understand how you see this problem. If you, in your position, what does this look like? And what would a fix look like? Again, you're not telling someone what to think. You are giving someone a place to reframe. So reframing means taking whatever the person you're speaking with says and directing it towards the problem you're trying to solve. So this allows people to be unhappy with the problem, but not at you or the company or whatever you're representing in that time. And so one of the things we talk about a lot in mediation and mediation training is we want to be really hard on the problem. We all want to work the problem. We all want to get down to the brass tacks of how do we solve this disconnect, this discord, this knot that needs to be untied. How do we focus on that and not on the people? So hard on the problem, soft on the people. This is, I think, where Ury is really talking about reframing. So I have to tell you, I think I've talked about this before, but and ad nauseum, if you're a student of mine, you've heard this and heard this, but I love frames theory. Okay, so it was first put forward in 1974 by Goffman, Goffman, under the title of Frame Analysis, an essay on the organization of experience. Okay, I love that. An essay on the organization of experience. Gosh, we all experience life, even when we don't want to, right? Sometimes at the worst possible times, life experience. Yeah. So this theory, frames theory, suggests how something is presented to an audience. So that's the frame. And yes, I'm using air quotes around my fingers here. So picture it, the frame. And it influences the choices people make about how to process that information. Frames are the elements that work to organize a structure's messages, meaning. Okay, now that's a lot of academic speak. Let me give you the way I like to explain it. So we go through life trying to make sense of all this content and information coming at us, right? And through our experiences, we build frames. So I have some pictures on the wall around me, and they're in frames. We all know what a frame around a picture looks like. So that picture content within that frame is what that subject matter is. So I have all of these frames in my brain, if you will, that say, hey, if I see this, this is the frame that belongs to you. And oh, if it's this, then it goes over here in this frame. And that's how we sift and sort information to understand choices and process. We're going to process that information. So by using the different frames we've all built in our brains, we can process the information that's coming at us in a logical and hopefully logical and systematic way. The trick about frames theory is you have to understand that that frame exists to give you an initial pass. Okay, that's the first experience with it. And if you get more information and it needs to be moved, you have to have the wherewithal to say, yeah, that's actually not where it belongs in my brain. I need to move it to this other theory. Or, hey, man, this actually is new information and I need to build a new frame for this information. So I love frames theory. I think it really does explain how people process and think and take in information on that first pass. So when Ury says don't reject, reframe, I think about frames theory, and I think about how do we take that first pass, and if it's not correct, reframe it, right? You have a piece of art and you really love that frame, but it got really outdated or it got dropped and broken, and now you have to put it in a new frame. Never be afraid to reframe something you've learned. All right, so let's go back to getting past no. One of the first priority things that Ury talked about is ask why. Okay. We talked on this podcast a lot about open-ended questions. What are the magic words? Who, what, where, when, why, how? Those are open-ended questions. Those ask for information versus a yes or no answer. So by asking why, you are seeking someone to help you build the frame or help you reframe something. That pushes through the underlying interests, and hopefully it produces a mutually satisfying outcome or agreement, because then you understand what the other people's interest is and maybe what the interest of their constituencies and maybe the people they have to answer to, right? So if you're dealing with the negotiation in a company, there's all kinds of pressures behind the person who you're dealing with. If you are in a one-on-one relationship, that there might be personal identity things that they're dealing with. So why someone feels that way or why someone needs the solution to look like that is about getting more information so that you can build a better frame to work together. What? Ask what? Well, okay. Hey, what if? I've heard this talked about as a thought balloon. And I think that's a really tough terminology because my brain doesn't do like hot air balloon, thought balloons. I don't know. But if it works for you, okay, thought balloon. Hey, what if XYZ? What if we could get that shipment to you in 30 days instead of 60? Would that make a difference? What if this one piece of our argument, our disagreement is different? Would that make it easier for you? Anything like that, it turns the conversation from you're wrong, I'm right, into a brainstorming session of how do we start to solve this thing together? How do we go from I and to a we? Ask for their advice. Now, I know things get heated and someone's kind of being a turd to you, and the last thing you want to do is ask for their, but it really is a powerful message, okay? If you were me, what would you do? Because if they immediately say, well, I just do whatever I told you to, that's like a parent-child thing, and you got some problems, all right? But very likely you're not going to get that knee-jerk response. You're really probably not. So if you were me, what would you want me to tell you? What would you hope I would say to you? It's a brilliant way to try and get inside to understand where someone's coming from. Okay, we're back to open-ended questions. What makes that fair? All right, now look, I got to tell you, fair is a really tough word. And yet Ury uses this as a jumping point to say, hey, this is what you can say. You must have good reasons for thinking that that's a fair solution. Can you share that with me? I am not a fan of the word fair. I don't really know what it means. It means something different in every context and with everybody's different backgrounds and cultures. And so fair is a tough one. I live in Texas and the fair happens in October. That's what I know. I know that one. The rest of this, I don't know. But if you think that's a fair solution, tell me why. Help me understand. To do this, you got to be with somebody who is beginning a conversation to build out what fair might actually look like. And if that standard is then rejected, i.e., that's not fair, and they start hearing it, then you can challenge them to say, hey, what's something that we can build that makes a fair standard together? But either way, you're back in the conversation. You're not at no, right? So that's the goal with what makes that fair. Not a fan of that word, but you're not applying a standard. You're actually saying, hey, let's figure out what fair looks like together in this context. If you think about that in relational standpoints, my relationship with my husband, our fair is a very different thing than my relationship with my children. Because fair to them, I clothe you, I feed you, I house you, I'm paying for your college. Fair is a real different story when I ask you to do something. Versus the person I share a life with that we've been together for, ever. And we have a different balance of what fair looks like, what that expectation is, that we share that standard. So fair is important, but it's also a very careful tread into using that word, right? Now, we've talked. Open-ended questions. Open-ended questions. Who, what, where, when, why, how? Who would that benefit? How is that the value for you? Do you feel we're on the right track? Yes or no? Why? Right. So you can ask a linear question that's going to give you yes or no, and then you can go back to an open-ended question. Don't feel like you have to stay in this open-ended question world, but because sometimes you need a yes or no to know which way to pivot your open end. It's not a bad thing. They're interplay, but if you're not staying in open-ended questions and fact-finding, then you're in telling mode. My husband will tell you I love to get into cross-examine mode. It's not cool, man. It's not cool, and it's not inviting solution building. It is telling. So we're going to stay in solution building. So we're going to use open-ended questions. Now, Ury says this so beautifully, and I say this and say this and say this. There are two things I say to my Masters at Law students that I think is true every time. Silence is one of the most powerful tools you can ever learn to harness, ever, and it's hard. The other is cultural competency, but we're not going to really talk about that today because today the subject matter is reframe. Don't reject, reframe. So Ury says, tap the power of silence. Oh, I love how he said that. The power of silence. Tap into it, right? So silence is something that so few people are comfortable with. Now, I'm an American. I'm a Texan. I'm a little gregarious in general. I'm an extrovert. People give me energy. I probably struggle with silence. I'm one of those people that struggles with silence. I've had to learn to tap the power of silence because it is so, so powerful. If you can get silent and let the other side talk, you will learn. Now, even if the other side is silent, don't fall prey. Just wait. Just wait. Ask a question. If you don't get an immediate answer, wait. If you wait long enough, the other person is likely to fill the space with some kind of information. So silence is a gift. And also remember, sometimes people need some silence to let their brain sift and sort so they can tell you. Now, I just told you cultural competency matters as well. And if you do some study into different cultures than your own, you will start to recognize that some cultures need silence before they can speak. They are not going to interrupt you. It is not acceptable in their culture to interrupt you. And so somebody like me who talks maybe a mile a minute, I had to recognize that in certain cultures, you need to stop the conversation and say, there's been a lot of talking. I haven't heard from you, and I want to know where your thoughts are. And then shut up, shut yourself up. That's the power of silence. And it's hard. It's hard to learn how to do it, but it never fails that my students, when we talked about these tactics, they come back and they're like, that was so useful. It's like, it really is, but it's hard to learn how to make yourself recognize the need for it and turn off the spigot at your mouth and let somebody else talk. Just wait. All right. Reframe tactics. Ury talks about go round stone walls, that take it or leave it. You can't ignore or reinterpret or test. So what is take it or leave it? And that is one of the weakest negotiating tactics if you don't really mean it. If you're done, be done. I know I work with negotiation all day long. When someone tells me, yep, this is best and final, and I know they mean it, I'm like, yep, we're done. But too many times people use that as but I'm holding another move or two in my pocket and I'm going to say, nope, that's it. It wears me out because it's really not clean and straightforward negotiation, but a lot of people will do it and I can't seem to get them out of it. If I can train you, please don't do it. Reinterpret that stonewalling as aspirational, right? Take it or leave it. This is it, best and final. We all want to be done. So instead of hearing it as, oh gosh, that's really it, you can say, I'm really glad you said that because it says you're ready to be done. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty ready to be done too. So let's get back to this so we can finish. You have to take it or leave it, best and final seriously. Don't ignore it, but you got to test it. Is it a bluff? Like I was describing, is it a bluff? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So keep asking the question until you really get that final no, not the first no, we're getting past no, but a real final no. As somebody said once in all these trainings I've done, that you aren't through negotiating until you really get to the last no. And it takes practice to understand where that is. But you usually can tell the first no from the last no. So detect attacks. Okay, we talked about the reframe tactic about, you take it or leave it. But you can detect an attack and you can ignore it. You can ignore it. And sometimes this is a way to stop being used. Okay, they're attacking you because they're waiting for you to give in. They're attacking you because they feel so threatened by the situation, they need something else to have the focus. Reframe a personal attack, right? This is about the personal attacking. Reframe it with friendly comment. If somebody is really being aggressive to you, you can say, hey, I'm not sure. Are you okay? You look like this is really getting to you. That really puts you back, first of all, in a power position because you've now shown concern for the other person rather than letting them just get your ire up. Now, I'm not telling you it's easy, but to recognize a personal attack for what it is, which it really rarely is. We talk about that old school, your finger pointing forward and three are pointing back. Someone is trying to point their finger so hard at someone else because they don't want all of that focus on them or on what's going to happen to them if this goes through or whatever it is. And you may never know what it is, but it's really important to turn that around. Reframe. Remember, reframing means taking whatever that person you are speaking with is saying and direct it towards the problem. We're going back to the problem. I'm not going to let it be about me. And it's easy to make it about the messenger, right? What is the old expression? Don't kill the messenger. It's easy to make it about the messenger, but it's rarely about the messenger. You've got to focus on the problem. Reframe. So far, we've talked about going to the balcony where you remove yourself for a minute. And we talked about stepping to their side where you're going to listen and paraphrase and try and create that really favorable climate for the discussion. Today, we've talked about reframing and my favorite frames theory to help you understand what reframing is really about, where we're going to work to adjust that conversation. We're going to problem solve together and build an atmosphere that says we're a we, not a me or a you. And we're going to use tactics to stop negative communication, right? So we were just talking about the reframing tactics. So next time in episode 4 of 5, we're going to discuss ways to build a golden bridge and hopefully help reach that place of agreement. Give them a way to come towards the agreement and the solution. I hope you've enjoyed this series. I think it's really important. This book is such a great piece of work. William Ury is a brilliant author and tactician, and he does it from a place of consistent. I even like the word kindness. I think he does work around that. He's a very positive person. And these are skills that you can use, even if you just pick up one or two, that will surprise you at the difference it makes the next time you're having that difficult conversation or you find yourself in a negotiation. All right. So again, this has been Let's Talk About Conflict. And my name is Lynn Nash. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you down the road.